I'd like to call the meeting of the open space, our virtual meeting of the open space meeting open, and for the open space committee for Tuesday, June 2nd. And as I start, I'd like to call the roll. So Susan Messina is here. Is Michael Doyle here yet from zoning?
So that was fine. Your Frank Rack was fine. I agree with the Susan Bucking instead.
All right. William Rice, Bill Rice.
Yep, here.
All right. Timothy Walzak.
Here.
And Marjorie Winters, I'm here. Eric Wellman's not here. David Bush is not able to be here. Helen Peterson.
Here I am.
You're here. JT Horn.
I'm here, yes.
Yes. And Maria Caparola, they're here. Tom Taberski.
Here.
Mike Glidden.
I'm here.
And Jeff Shea.
I'm here.
We're all there. So we are moving on to public audience. Oh, and Anne is here. Anne Erickson is here. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Margie. How are you?
Fine, thanks. So you were able to make it after all?
I can be here for the first hour.
Okay.
So 5:30, I have to jump off. But then
Right.
Mike Doyle is going to come in at some point. He's got the invitation.
Okay,
And
good.
he will sit in from zoning for the rest of it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So public audience. I don't see that we have any public audience, but we do have a couple of submittals that I will read. We have one from Daniel Dermo, and she says, I would like to share my comments on the open space meeting. One, I support the purchase of Meadowwood. I think it's great to see the Open Space Committee proactively purchasing open space. It is very important for the town to compensate for all the space that has been lost over the last 5 years, for all the overbuilding in the town, which has adversely affected the rural nature of the town. Two, I think selling any open space is a big mistake and has an adverse effect on the town, and it's a very bad precedent to set. Even the small parcels add to the real estate values of the town and should be left in their natural state. Thank you, Daniel Dermo. Then we have one from Diane Nash, and Diane writes, I am asking this committee to request a postponement of the public hearing on the sale of an open space parcel. 1. The restraints under the COVID-19 guidelines preclude open and fair participation, and though meeting the legal standard, it does not meet the standard of transparency and fairness. 2. There should be no consideration of the sale of any parcel until the Open Space Committee has completed the current study and report for stewardship of open space. Additionally, I request the Open Space Committee to educate on the value of even the smallest parcels ecologically and reverse the uninformed view that the random parcels are economically neutral or even an economic drain. Facts are, the open space parcels were created to enhance the yield on parcels of land, bringing immediate benefits to the developer by allowing additional dwellings to be built and to the town in tax revenue from these additional dwellings. The R30 open space zone allowed an R40, 1 house per acre lot size to be reduced with matching acreage amounts clustered to be better positioned dwellings to avoid wetlands, adhere to regulations for private sanitation and wells that could not be achieved if each property must have the 200 by 200 foot parcel, a builder's acre. Reconfiguring parcels by soil requirements rather than by acre lot size was an economic benefit to the developer and was and is an ongoing tax revenue benefit to the town of Simsbury. These parcels have value both as natural space and a revenue source. Diane Nash. So those are the comments. The next item on the agenda is...
Marjorie?
Yes.
May I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, please.
I don't know when I should do this, but maybe this is a good time. I would like to request an amendment to our agenda so we can discuss an item I'd like to bring forward. Is that acceptable at this time?
I think we need to vote on it, but yes, would you like to do, when would you like to, where would you like the, what would you?
Whenever you want to put it into the agenda, I want to have the opportunity to discuss with the committee our present calendar of meetings.
Okay. Let's put it as item 3. We'll amend to item 3, or we could do it at the end, but let's do item 3. We'll get it done.
Okay.
If I have a motion to amend the agenda to add that item to our agenda as item number 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
good. Thank
moved.
you.
All right. And do we have a second?
Second, is that's after the Trust for Public Land people, right? Because I don't want to hold them up.
Do we have the Trust for Public Land people here?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, sorry. All right, well then let's move it down to the end. Shall we move it to the end of the meeting then? Then we won't hold them up. All right, so we'll move it to item number 5. All right, so again, let's have an amended approval.
Whatever. Thank you very much.
All right, do we have amendment to that? Whoever approved?
Yeah, I
All
move
right, do we
to
have a
accept
second?
the amended motion.
All right, and do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So then we'll move on to item 2, which is the approval of the minutes for the March 4th, 2020 meeting, which seems so long ago now in a different level. So Susan.
Yeah, so I looked at those and I know I made a lot of comments at the meeting and I'm not sure if the minutes were created in the meeting. I guess they probably were. Who does the minutes? Is it Maria or Eric or Tom or Mike?
I think I did those ones.
Oh, okay. Well, I know I was so mesmerizing during the meeting, but I think some of my comments are missing from the minutes. So can I maybe type in some stuff or whatever we can
Sure.
deal with this next time?
Yeah, if you have some additional comments that you'd like reflected for the record, just go ahead and email them to me and we can add those and bring them to the next committee meeting.
So
Okay,
we
great.
will, all right, so we will table the minutes for now. Do we need a vote on that to table them?
I don't think so.
So, all right. So moving on to the open space, item number 3, open space referral on the Meadowwood acquisition. So, who is handling that one?
So,
Do I need to to read this one?
I was going to say, Mike or Maria, do you want to get this started or do you want us to just go right ahead?
Sure. So just introducing JT Horn and Honor Lawler from the Trust for Public Land. They're going to take and walk the committee through the slides, which is an overview that was provided previously to the Board of Selectmen. But again, we do think it's very informational and it'll help sort of frame the discussion for today. And then we have a number of other items that we'd like to discuss after we work through the overview, including potential recreational uses, the environmental review, next steps and things of that nature. But we'll start off with Trust for Public Land, and Mike will be assisting with that presentation.
That sounds great. So my name's JT Horn. I'm a project manager at our Vermont office, and I have been covering for Honor Lawler, who's also with us today, who is the normal project manager in Connecticut and would be doing this work normally. Today is her second day back from maternity leave.
Wow.
So I'm going to take the lead on this, but over the coming months, you're going to see more of Honor and less of me. So please bear with us. But are the slides available to pull up at this point?
Yeah, Tom, would you mind screen sharing the presentation? Thank you.
Perfect. Look at that. Thanks, Tom. You can go to the next slide. So just a little bit about us, if you're not familiar. We're a nonprofit. We are based in California, and we're known as the Land for People organization. So we pick our conservation projects, for things that have an element of getting people outside and getting people connected with nature. We do a lot of work in the inner city with city parks and playgrounds and things like that. And we also do working lands like working farms and working forests. And we have a real kind of specialty for some larger and more complex acquisitions. So we have an office in New Haven and have been active in the state since 1986. We've protected over 7,500 acres, and And we've worked in Simsbury before. For those of you that know the Ethel Walker Woods project, my understanding was we were a long-term partner and went through a lot with the town of Simsbury then. And I've since come to learn there's been even a couple of other projects that were successful, Trust for Public Land, Town of Simsbury collaborations. And so this is, while I'm new and Honors, sort of relatively new, there's a long history between the organization and Simsbury. Can you go to the next slide? So Mike is going to talk a little bit about the history of the Meadowwood project from its permitting history through the municipal boards and such, and then I'll switch over and talk about the acquisition opportunity. Mike, do you want to just cover some of the permitting history?
Yeah. So I think everyone's familiar with this project. It was an affordable housing project that was approved by the court in 2008. This was a proposal for 296 residential homes to be built on the various fields with some open space and conservation easements associated with it. 88 of the 296 homes had a deed restriction, so affordability component associated with it. The approvals for this subdivision are valid through March 20th, 2022. Tom, you go to the next slide. So the map that you're seeing on this slide, this was part of the court settlement where obviously these are old tobacco fields. And as part of the court settlement, there had to be some cleanup that had to occur in areas where there was pesticide residue. So these activities were completed consistent with the remediation plans. The town of Simsbury has engaged the services of a licensed environmental professional to review the files, inspect the site, and really it's our due diligence since we will be partnered in purchasing this property. We are just confirming everything's there. There's no suspicions that nothing was completed inconsistent with the approved remediation plans, but we're just doing our due diligence on that. And Jeff can speak to this later if anyone has any questions. Tom, you go to the next slide. And I'll turn it over back to JT.
Great. So, yeah, it sounds like everyone knows this property, but we see it as a great opportunity to continue to partner with Simsbury, and it really fits nicely into the conservation landscape due to its connection to the McLean Game Refuge and Massaco State Forest. If you can go to the next slide. And it's got a lot of important conservation attributes. Most notably is perhaps the historic resource that's here with Martin Luther King's history of coming to Simsbury as a young man, working 2 summers on this property. One of our key partners is the State Historic Preservation Office, which is very interested in telling that story related to Dr. King. And given where we are in our nation's history, it's a particularly relevant tale today. We also see opportunities for new trails and multiple new access points to several of the neighborhoods that are in and around the Meadowwood property. The idea is that portions of the property would be really open to public use and would have community access. And then parts of the property would stay as a working farm. And that we would be looking to have a farming preservation easement on part of it. And then part of the property, we understand there's a need for more ball fields and athletic fields in Simsbury, and so a portion of the property would be dedicated to that purpose as well. And then the final is those iconic white tobacco barns on Firetown Road that are so beautiful and such an important part of the history of the town. They're in some disrepair, and one of them fell down earlier this spring. Part of the goal here is to stabilize those structures and use that part of the property as really the jumping off point for telling some of the history of the property, particularly the Dr. King history. And so preserving those barns and stabilizing them would be one of the outcomes as well. The next slide. So the Trust for Public Land, again, we have a specialty to work with communities to help them meet their open space goals, and we have a kind of harder heads or maybe a higher risk tolerance than a lot of other organizations. And so we've kind of caught a tiger by the tail with this project. We've been working with Griffin Industrial Realty, who's the landowner. They own it through a subsidiary company. And they do have permits in hand. And so there's a very robust valuation for this property. But we have negotiated a fixed price contract at $6 million. That's supported by a current appraisal. It's something we feel like is a bargain sale. We'll be doing some final appraisal work as the project unfolds. But it's really reflective of the fact that it's a turnkey developable property. The contract we have has an initial term to February, and we want to make sure that we have made adequate progress on the fundraising and the due diligence and securing all the different elements to have a successful project. And if things are on track, we can get a 6-month extension until July of 2021. Part of the negotiation with Griffin is that we said we'd like to buy this, we'd like to conserve it, but unlike when you sell your house, when you typically close in 60 days or something like that, we asked for this long runway of 18 months to pull together the $6 million purchase price and to do the due diligence and set up the partnerships with the town. And in exchange for that, they asked for permit extensions. And so part of our agreement with Griffin includes that they will go before the town boards and ask for permit extensions, and we will support that. They have to be viewed on their own merits, and the town has to act independently. But it's something that we felt was fair as a way to move the whole project forward. It's fair to them, it's fair to us. If we're going to ask for this long-term contract, they don't want to be penalized for giving a conservation acquisition a chance. Next slide. So how will this hit the ground? So tentatively, in consultation with the town staff, we've developed essentially a 4-phase structure. Phase 1 would be the whole western side of the property that would be really oriented towards recreation and telling the Martin Luther King history of the property. It could have trails. It could be a place that you could have continued farming if you chose, or wildlife habitat. It's really designed to be kind of a recreational amenity for the community. The athletic fields are close to the school, and I'm forgetting the name of the school. I'm showing I'm not a Simsbury resident here, but they were sort of, it was a nice spot on the property because they're flat. They're easy to turn into athletic fields just based on the topography and the soil, and the proximity to the school location made an attractive place. And there's a picture in the slides about what that layout would look like. And then the eastern side of the property would stay as farmland, and that the idea here is that there'd be a state easement over that part of the property, and Simsbury would own it and have to work on leasing it to a local farmer. That part is, something we're still in the middle of trying to figure out the right details on that, but continuing the farming history because it's such productive land is one of the goals. And then the barns, again, they'd be stabilized, and that would be a jumping off place for telling the history of the site. And part of our project includes a partnership with the State Historic Preservation Office to help with funding that part of the property. So next slide. So this map shows all of those different outcomes. So working left to right or west to east, the open space basically spans both sides of Firetown Road. The historic barns where the MLK history would be told is right on the central part of the Firetown Road frontage. And then on Hoskins Road is where the athletic fields and the farmland preservation area would be. And so those athletic fields would basically take up some of the existing agricultural area and be converted to athletic fields and parking. And then the remainder of that eastern side would be dedicated to continued farming. Next slide. So how do we pay for all this? This is a tentative model. We're still working on this. We're doing some appraisal work right now to try and confirm the prices for each phase, and we're applying for different grants right now. So this is all subject to change, but this is how we see the project coming together. Just shy of $2.2 million would need to come from the town. And Maria and the select board have, tentatively have a plan to put this on the ballot in November for a town vote. We're writing an open space grant with this to the state right now, and Honor's taking the lead on that now that she's back, and I'm thrilled that she's back. And then we have on the slide here, it says the state via the Land and Water Conservation Fund. We think we're likely to do a substitution here to something called the Highlands Conservation Act. Both the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the Highlands Conservation Act are federal grants that flow through the state, and we think this property can qualify for either, but the Highlands Act money is just a better fit. So that would all be on the open space component. The ag component would be an easement through the Department of Ag, and we have that pegged at a little over $1.7 million. And then the partnership with the State Historic Preservation Office, we're applying to a grant right now that's pending before them for $500,000, which would go towards the acquisition capital, and then an additional $300,000 that we would use to stabilize the structures. And so the historic preservation angle here is pretty significant. And then there's one lot at 129 Holcomb Street that under Griffin's contract, they have already a agreement with an abutter to sell that lot. So we would step in and take that role. And since there's already a purchase and sale agreement in place, that lot would be sold. So that's how we reach the $6 million purchase price. Then on top of that, we'll need to raise additional funds for the Trust for Public Land for our project costs, our survey, our appraisal, our investment in the project. And we'd like to do an increment above that. And that's really about some of our equity work. So when we work in a place like Simsbury, that is a community of wealth, we love working in places like this where there's community capacity and interested donors. We try and sometimes add an increment more to allow us to redeploy resources to places like Bridgeport or other communities in Connecticut where we have trouble raising money and doing a community forest or doing a city park or something like that. And so our private fundraising campaign, again, none of the public grants would go towards this, but we're hoping to stand up a local fundraising campaign would cover some of those project costs and that program reinvestment line. And just because it's a big, complicated transaction, those project costs are sort of unusually high, but you see the number of grants, federal funding, state funding, that's all intended to be covered through that private campaign. Next slide. So what are the action items for the town? Again, we think 2.2 million, 2.175 million is the right number that we would have asked the select board to include in a November ballot measure. And then the next two items are done, which is nice. So we've asked the select board for a letter just requesting our technical assistance that allows us to help put together town meeting materials and otherwise assist the town with a vote. I mean, we want to not run afoul of the lobbying rules. And then develop a memorandum of understanding. So because we'd be working hand in glove with the town, we have a memorandum of understanding that has been signed. Maria has signed it on behalf of the town. that just outlines roles and responsibilities. And so this is really modeled on the Ethel Walker Woods project, and we're really intending to do the same thing, where we hold the contract with the landowner, we take care of some of the outside fundraising, we collaborate on the due diligence, and it shows just how we would work together. I mentioned the permit extensions, and so that will be coming up at the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, and the Historic Preservation Committee?
Zoning
Okay.
Commission.
You're keeping me straight here, Mike.
You were close.
And then on the due diligence, normally the Trust for Public Land takes the lead on all that and provides due diligence up for the town and the town attorney to review to make sure everything checks out. In this project, because of the environmental history was so extensive, the town is taking the lead on the environmental due diligence and will take the lead on everything else. There was such an extensive file that the town really felt like they had a good handle on what was going on there, and we were coming into that cold, and given all the history, it just made more sense for you guys to take the lead there. But I think that's the last slide. Yeah, so the next couple slides are just some of the subdivision layout so that you can get familiar with this. This was in the packet that was circulated. But I think that's the thumbnail of where we are and what we're trying to do. And obviously this is a pretty significant open space undertaking. And so getting the referral to this committee from the Board of Selectmen felt like the right next step.
Marjorie, you're on mute.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. JP, thank you very much. Now, should we open it up to comments or discussion?
So we could start with comments or discussion. We had a couple of other items we did want to review with you. So I don't know if you want to work through just some more background information first. We wanted Tom to review the potential recreational use for about 24 acres on the property, and then Jeff to go over the environmental review. So whatever your preference is, Marjorie, we could have them continue.
That
okay,
makes sense.
Great, super.
Yes.
Tom, would you mind going next?
Sure. Tom Fitzgerald, can you pull up the slide with the athletic field concept plan? I think it's the next one, or one more down. There we go. So going through this parks and open space master plan process with the number of groups and organizations in town, it is clear that some of these groups are still growing. Is there an immediate need today for these fields? No, there's not. But down the line, the town is continuing to grow with the recent housing development. People are still moving here. The demographics are changing, and that's why we're looking at building new schools and that kind of thing. So, with the thought that when this opportunity came to us, we met as a group and thought this would be worthwhile, at least considering setting aside part of this land for future athletic field development, if needed, if and when it's needed. It could be 3 years, it could be 8 years, but we feel it's prudent to set something aside. We don't have a lot of places in town where this type of topography exists. That in places that we own, most of our athletic fields are, like Curtis Park is in a wetland, and it's going to be near impossible to expand that. And other places other land that we do own are in areas that are in sensitive habitats and would certainly be disruptive to do land clearing or that type of thing. So, when this opportunity came to us, it seems like it's a pretty good investment in the long-term thinking of the town to set this aside, and is adjacent on the western end to an area that was previously used for soccer field. You kind of see it just to the left of the parking area, that long strip. We do mow that regularly. It was a neighborhood soccer field and one that the soccer club did use for training over the years. It's kind of gotten away from that a little bit, but we still do maintain it. So the thought was this piece in this area was the best fit of the development. And, it's not saying it's soccer or lacrosse. It's 6 multi-purpose fields at this point, and we will determine how to use it as things continue to develop. But this was a concept plan that we put together with the engineering department, and we think it's a pretty good representation of what could this area could look like. Any questions?
Hi, it's Susan. So I had a couple of questions about that. So there aren't any specific grants for that 24 acres. Is that correct?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. So that is sort of, that 24 acres is kind of carved out for more flexible use, like, depending on what kind of field we might want it to be. So that's just like a flexible 24 acres that we're intending for possible future rec fields, but it's not like set in stone exactly what happens, and there's no funding tied to its future. Is that correct?
There's no funding set aside for future development of athletic fields in this area at this time.
Okay. Does this deal preclude building any kind of buildings or infrastructure? Like, what if we wanted some kind of thing on there? Is it is that still allowed in this 24 acres? Is that a carve out for potential? I don't know what if we wanted to have cows on the property and we need a different barn. I don't know. I'm just putting stuff out there to see what the flexibility is.
From my understanding, it does allow, there's no deed restrictions tied to this part of the purchase. So if we wanted to put a pavilion or a storage shed or something like that, I believe we would be allowed to do that within the zoning regulations. Mike could speak better to that than I could, but I believe there's no restrictions on it for outbuildings, that kind of thing.
Right, and that's, so right now our funding plan will come with deed restrictions on the other parts of the property. So like the agricultural area would have an agricultural easement. The open space components would have deed restrictions running back to the state, or actually a donated conservation easement that would go back to the state. This part of the property doesn't have those deed restrictions or easements tied to the various grants. And so of the monies that Simsbury would be putting up, a big chunk would go towards this piece. And again, we're sort of doing the phase by phase appraisals and valuation. But we think it should all work out. But this would basically be solely funded by the town under our funding model.
Okay. And I appreciate Tom's comment that because we have had a number of studies that showed that we had plenty of fields, but I appreciate that the town is growing, so we can see what future needs are. I would just say that I would be opposed to putting in turf fields. I'm not really a fan of turf fields, so I'm just putting that on the record should that come up in the future. So, I mean, artificial turf fields.
Maria, did you want to have others speak to this issue?
I would say, I know Dave Bush sent us some comments. He wasn't able to attend the meeting. So I don't know, Marjorie, if you feel it would be most appropriate to read those now or wait.
That would be fine.
Okay, great.
Here. All right. This is Dave Bush sent this today. And it's Eric and Marjorie. Unfortunately, I am going to be unable to attend today's Open Space Committee meeting. I understand the primary issue to be addressed at the meeting is whether Open Space Committee is in support of Meadowwood property acquisition. Although I cannot attend the meeting, I did want to state my position regarding the potential acquisition. I am unequivocally in support of the acquisition. This is a rare opportunity to preserve this valuable open space. The property would provide both recreational and agricultural opportunities to the town and its residents. The continued use of the land for farming is consistent with its present and past use. Moreover, it provides open space for passive use and continues to provide habitat for a variety of animals and birds. The purchase of this property also makes good fiscal sense, as a residential development on the property of this size will put a strain on the existing town resources and services. In particular, the burden on the school system would be significant and costly. Simsbury has recently seen a sizable increase in housing development and does not need a project of the size of Meadowwood going forward. Simsbury has a unique opportunity to preserve this land as open space for future generations. Despite all the unknowns regarding the fiscal effect of this pandemic, I fully support the purchase of Meadowwood property by the town of Simsbury. Good luck at the meeting, David Bush.
Marjorie, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who those comments were from.
David Bush.
Thank you.
All right. So I know, Maria, you had sent me a list of things that I was supposed to do.
Yes, next, that's okay. Next would be Jeff and the environmental review.
All right, thank you. Jeff.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so as Mike had mentioned in his portion of the presentation, once the town was considering this acquisition, we retained the services of a licensed environmental professional to assist us with the environmental review of the property. He had recommended that we complete a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is a standard protocol for acquiring property. And it comes into play more often when there's a concern for hazardous substances, a la an establishment, which this is not, is determined that it's not an establishment, but it's still good practice when you purchase property to do this review. What it includes is doing a review of any releases that have occurred on the property, review of the remediation plan that was completed with all the data that was available for that particular activity, a recon of the property and all the barns, which was completed. And this study is actually in process. It's not complete at this time, particularly because DEP records aren't currently available. There's significant records that may be available at DEP that we cannot get to right now because of limited staff available. And there was also a couple of key documents that were not provided by the seller. We had requested them, and they're just dribbling in right now. That should allow us to complete the study if, in fact, this DEP record review can be completed. At this point in time, there's no red flags from what my interpretation of the documents that we have. The consultant actually went through some 12 banker boxes that we have from the original court action, plus all the databases that are available online. So they've done quite a bit of work, but the job's not complete at this time. And that's really where we are right now with it. Can't really say when it'd be complete, but again, there's been a lot of work done.
Thank you, Jeff. And next?
So next would just be any discussion or questions that committee members may have.
Right. So I open it up.
Make a comment?
Yes, please.
Are you trying to open up comments?
Yes, open to comment.
Okay. I am able to say that this is a wonderful opportunity. This is a win-win. I cannot, I'm going back to old thinking, but maybe it's still present thinking that cows don't go to school. And that's what Dave Bush was trying to explain, I guess. This is an opportunity for us to really respond in a favorable way. And I think our guidance to the Board of Selectmen and to the other commissions in town should be considered. And I think we need to be ready today to send forward a positive referral. And that's my input. Something else may come to mind as I hear others begin the conversation.
I also think
go ahead.
Oh, Tim, you go ahead first.
Oh, it's okay. I just had a question. I understand that the because it's greater than 1%, that it's got to go to a referendum. You had mentioned the fundraising. What does that possibly look like on our end?
So our rollout of this project has been terrible as far as the timing goes. We picked a really exciting, big, bold, risky project and picked a pandemic to roll it out. So with that timing, we have been kind of laying low on the community fundraising front. But we're going to want to work with you and with local donors and stakeholders to set up a local fundraising committee. And that will help with the private fundraising component. And so Honor and her colleagues will, be in touch, and I'll let her say a few additional words here. But we haven't really ramped up this part of the project yet, really because of the public health situation. And so under a normal Trust for Public Land project, we would be doing essentially three things simultaneously: the public funding and the grant writing and everything, the work around a town meeting, vote, and a private fundraising campaign, and sort of trying to move all three simultaneously. Right now, all of our efforts are going into the public grant writing and that effort, and we really have sort of, put the public or the private campaign, the local campaign, kind of on ice while it's impossible to go have a donor meeting or things like that. But we're going to have to figure that out and figure out a way to work collaboratively with other folks in the community.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Helen, yes.
I have a question.
Yes, Helen.
Okay, given what JT has just shared with us, is it realistic to assume, JT, that the time frame that you had originally placed on this project and the extensions that you have requested, do we have any leeway with those time extensions? Is it something that we should consider? Is it unrealistic to consider? I am really fishing for the right question here, but I'm wondering where in that time frame you can suggest to us the possibilities of extensions.
Yeah. So Helen, that's a great question. And like I said, our timing has been challenging. But we pride ourselves on being very businesslike. And right now we see a path to getting this done in the normal time frame that we've negotiated with Griffin. And if the public health situation stabilizes and we can, get back to doing some walks with appropriate social distance and things like that, we would like to do that. I think we all need to be very creative in how we get the work done, but we've reached an agreement with Griffin. We've signed a contract, and at least at the moment, we intend to live by that. And if extenuating circumstances require us to pursue an extension, we may have to go there. But we're doing business with a company that's been very good to work with thus far, and we want to honor our side of the deal. So we are intending to move forward at the moment under the current time frame.
Thank you.
Else? I too feel this is a phenomenal project. Having been on the Meadowwood project from, I think, back in 2001, it's delightful to see how it did not turn into the proposal, and that it's come around to this. I think, and looking at the map, you can see the connections, the habitat connections from Great Pond up through McLean. It's a wonderful opportunity for the town, and I hope it goes through. Does anyone have any other comments? Are we ready?
I again have a question.
Yes, good.
The protocol here, if I remember reading correctly in the presentation, hearing in the presentation and reading the material, we have to write a letter, and we have to present this in the form of a letter as advisory to the Board of Selectmen. Who's supposed to write that letter? You?
I know I'll probably have to write one for conservation. Yeah, it's interesting because we've got the heads of the various land use agencies, and they will be writing their letters. So we don't really have a designee for for this?
Mhm.
Is there any volunteers? In which case, is this a letter by committee? And would we have the opportunity to review it, and how would we go about that? What would be the best way? Or does it have to be an elaborate letter?
Do we have to vote on something first?
Yeah, we'd have to make a referral, vote on a referral. And I'm assuming everyone thinks this is a great idea. First, we should, sort of vote and see whether everyone agrees that this is a good idea. Is there anyone who has an opposition to this project? I love Zoom meetings. Everyone's so quiet. Anne?
No, I think it's an excellent idea, and I agree that I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the town, and I'm delighted with the open spaces and wildlife corridors.
So I'm not hearing any dissenting voices, and I believe we have a quorum, so that we could go forward with a vote on a referral, and then we can work on the letter. Is that correct, Maria? Or how much of a letter do we need?
Sure. I mean, it could even be something very brief, just saying that the Open Space Committee, if the vote is unanimously, supports this acquisition. If you wanted to elaborate more, provide, more detail, if that was something that, Marjorie as essentially vice chair that maybe you and Eric wanted to work on, or if another committee member wanted to maybe take that task on and elaborate further, it's something you guys could certainly do, or you could, keep it brief.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So, would anyone like to make a motion for a positive referral to the Board of Selectmen?
I can motion.
All right. All right. Is that the motion? All right. All right. Susan,
Second.
your second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. It is a unanimous decision from the Open Space Committee for a positive referral to the Board of Selectmen. Excellent. And I'll get together with Eric and we'll draft up some writing. All right. And the next steps. Mike and Maria, did you want to? I found my notes. Mike and Maria, did you want to discuss the next steps?
Mike, do you want to take next steps in terms of the committees that will be reviewing it and some of those items and the permit?
Oh, okay. Mike, are you going to do that?
So this will now go to the land use commissions. They all, as we indicated in the presentation, the applicant also will be submitting a request for preliminary discussions on extension to the permits. So they'll start with the Historic District Commission this Friday, then it'll go to the Planning Commission, the Zoning Commission, and Conservation. So all the land use commissions will be now receiving this referral. Based on the feedback from this committee, that's why we brought this before the Open Space Committee first. That was related to the other open space item that we had.
Maria, do you have anything else to add? Or?
No, just that we'll, continue to get the feedback from our other groups. We'll present that information back to the Board of Selectmen, most likely sometime, during the summer. They do have a condensed meeting schedule during the summer. So if we don't end up with all the referral information back for the July 13th meeting, it would be their August meeting that they would receive that feedback. So we do expect that their discussion on this will continue throughout the summer and into the fall. They were hopeful that we might be able to send this to referendum in the November timeframe, as we would need bond funds in order to make the acquisition.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mike, what do you mean this is related to the other open space item?
No, we brought this before the Open Space Committee first at the request. Remember the last time we had a referral? It was for the sale of open space. The committee was like, why was the Open Space Committee the last to hear about it? So instead, you're the first.
Okay. Just checking there wasn't something else that I missed. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll move on to item 4, updates, oral reports. We have a report on
Marjorie, can I just
yes.
First off, just thank you. That's a great outcome for us. We're very appreciative. We are going to work very hard on your behalf to make all of this happen. I just wanted to give Honor a quick moment to say anything else. I mean, this is really her project, and I've just been standing in. But I just wanted, you're going to see more of Honor moving forward, and so I just wanted everyone to, hear from her briefly before we depart.
And thank you for bringing this to the town. And I mean, you do have a difficult. You have chosen a difficult time. Not you've chosen it. A difficult time has been thrust upon you, and we're all rooting for you.
Yeah, thanks, Marjorie, and for having us, and thanks, JT, for the segue. I'm really excited about this project. I mean, we've been, sort of talking about it with the town since last summer, and now it's sort of well underway. The next steps, I think, as the town process moves forward in relation to the sort of private fundraising campaign too, is to get some of you folks and to get connected with some of the other folks in town who are really going to care about this project and want to see it moving forward, and to really sort of start, building the momentum and the community around, moving this forward, getting people excited about it, getting donors out on the land. And so as you guys have your next meeting, it might make sense to sort of strategize about, how do we sort of come together to get connected and get the word out and get people excited, get, all that stuff sort of started at least. I mean, we're a little late in the game here, but that's okay.
All right. Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing more about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. I'm going to sign off at this point.
All right.
Same. All right. Take care, everybody. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes. All right. Now move on to item 4, updates, oral reports, Parks and Open Space Master Plan.
I could fill you in a little bit. If just like every organization, COVID-19 has had a tremendous impact on our organization, but also upon Weston and Sampson, who are our consultants for the project. They've had a few people out, particularly one of the people working on our team was out for quite a bit of period of time. So our project pace of moving forward was slowed down quite a bit. But they did present a rough version of a rough draft, I guess, to us back in mid-April that our steering committee was able to take a look at. We gave them a lot of feedback from that. I know I turned over quite a bit, and some other comments have come in that we've been forwarding to them, and I know they're working on incorporating as much of that as possible to try to turn it around for, I think, something being delivered to us hopefully next week. So that week, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled, I believe, Maria, for June 18th. Is that correct? In the morning, June 18th, a Zoom meeting for the commissions, the Open Space Committee here and the Parks and Culture, Parks and Recreation Commission, to review and give additional feedback, final feedback before that project goes over to the Board of Selectmen in the middle of July, I believe. So that's kind of where we are at this point. We certainly were more impressed with the materials we received in April, but still there was some further tweaking that we thought was needed at that point. So I know they're incorporating those concepts and ideas and feedback that we gave them.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
All right. Any comments, Susan?
I may have a question, but maybe I'm just not quite sure I understand how all this is going to take place and be accomplished. You say by the middle of July. So if you have a rough draft, when do we actually see it?
I'm hoping, Susan. I'm hoping, Helen, that we have it back next week, and that would give everybody, 10 days, ideally, minimum 10 days time to review. If they're unable to meet that, I mean, at this point, things are changing all the time and evolving. If we find that there's an immediate need to push it back, I think we can work with that, Maria.
Yeah, agreed.
So there's some flexibility then.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we had built in a tentative time frame for sort of continuing to move the project forward. But so many of our deadlines due to the pandemic they get changed. And so we're trying to.
I'm not trying to slow it down. I'm just trying to be sure that it's done correctly,
Of
done
course.
well.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we were hoping to really pull back the Open Space Committee and the Culture Park and Rec Commission together again at a joint meeting like we did in January with some of the initial findings, to really give both committees an opportunity to see the draft document. And as Tom mentioned, Weston and Sampson right now is working on incorporating the edits. We had a small working group that included Susan and Dave Bush and Jerry Wetchen and Marjorie and myself, Mike and Tom. So we provided some initial feedback. They're working through those edits. And again, we're hoping to have a pretty good rough draft for the full committees to take a look at, digest, discuss as a group. And that's the meeting that we're hoping to have the morning of June 18th.
Thank you.
Susan, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add, I hope we can have the document a little bit before the morning of June 18th, because it just is going to take some time to look it over. And, I'm just trying to juggle a number of things. One thing that did come up, which I think is something we should really kind of all collectively think about, is one of the goals of the Open Space Master Plan was to try and pull together the information that we have on different parcels so that we kind of have a repository of our policies, of our, biodiversity surveys, of our stewardship stuff, of our, even our ag leases and all those kinds of things. So even if those things aren't 100% finalized, I really want to make sure that they are at least reflected in an appendix or something like that, because I keep on finding all this stuff that exists that nobody knows about. And we need a hub to tag this stuff onto so it doesn't keep on getting lost in, I don't know, minutes of meetings somewhere, or, people change jobs and it's all kind of, just swept down the river. We really need to use this as a hub.
As a hub, did you say? Thank you.
As a hub. Or I don't know. Maybe that's not a good word, but
I'm trying to read your lips. Okay.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Moving on to Connecticut statutes and recreational liability. Is anyone doing that?
That's Susan.
Susan.
I sent this in as an agenda item, and I didn't pull up the recreational liability statutes, but I believe I did send it to Tom and maybe also to Maria and Eric, just to make sure that everyone knows that there was a big push in Connecticut in about 2010, 2012 to essentially exempt towns from liability for anything that happens on open space land that's open to the public, as long as the town is not putting up like a purposeful danger or hazard, something like that. I just think it's important to understand what our liability is on, our open space land. And I think that would also be a good type of appendix to be on this open space master plan. So whenever you're talking about open space, you kind of have a one-stop shopping to know, what the rules are, what our policies are, what's on our different properties, why are these properties conserved, what values are we looking for? And some of these things have kind of been slowly working through the system, even if they're not done by the time we approve or whatever, finish the open space master plan. I think at least the title of that document should be there. I don't know what the title is, Mike, of that open space policy we're looking at. Anyway, so this would be an example of another thing to attach to our hub. And I found another one also about essentially disposing of open space, which may relate to the other open space issue we're talking about. It's a Connecticut statute, which basically says if the town wants to apply open space land to another purpose, it needs to provide management open space of equal value. So there's kind of like a whole bunch of, statutes related to what you do with open space. And I think it would be good to have them at hand.
Good point. All right. And moving on to mountain biking in nature preserves. Susan.
That's me. I'm on the Connecticut Land Trust listserv, and just coincidentally, there's been a lot of discussion about topics that are really relevant to things that we've been talking about in town. We've talked about mountain biking before. My husband and I mountain bike, or at least we used to until I got like too old and decrepit. But maybe I will again. I don't know. But anyway, we go to Stratton Brook Park, which is a good spot. I do know that it can be very damaging to the trails. But one of the things that's come up on the Land Trust listserv is actually one of the bigger impacts than the trails is the wildlife issues. So if you mountain bike in an area, or, even if you have dogs off leash, but mountain biking, there's a lot of documented evidence that the wildlife leaves and they don't come back. So it has a permanent impact on the wildlife, values of that property for wildlife. And I have a bunch of references for that, and that might be something to also, stuff into the open space master plan as we start to think about what properties are appropriate for what kinds of uses. So,
just a comment here, if I may. I cannot see myself on a mountain bike, but let's say there has been past, what's the word I'm thinking of? Habits. That is an activity that has been pursued by many and enjoyed by many. But when you learn something important, something new, emerging science that tells you that it is harmful in some way or another, you just suggested, what it does to the wildlife in the area. Well, I never thought of that. So I'm saying we need to be mindful that nothing that we do in our work about open space is ever stagnant. As we move forward with our open space, as we consider and reconsider how we are using it, it's very valid to bring up the issues that we learn about. And I'm glad that you consider thinking about the liability, not just to people in the litigious society that we are, but the liability of the natural life there in the forests. So I'm just open to this kind of conversation, and thank you for bringing it to our attention.
And I know this is an issue that's come up before the Simsbury Land Trust, is the dogs on leash, dogs off leash, and the potential of closing a trail at a certain time of the year for nesting birds, because even on leash, dogs have an impact on nesting birds. So it goes to the goals that you want for that particular property. Is it for the wildlife? Is it only for the trails? Can we have a balance between the trails and the wildlife? So all these things feed into that. Thank you, Susan. And the last item, number 4, is Pollinator Pathway Program, possible grants. Now, I know I don't have any. Someone who's going to be reporting on the possible grants for pollinator pathways.
I can't speak to the grants, but I could use this opportunity to give you an update. Marjorie and Nancy Grandin did a really nice presentation for myself, Orlando Casiano, our park superintendent, and Brian Johnson, our assistant golf superintendent. It feels like that was so long ago when we actually met in person. It wasn't an in-person meeting. I just can't remember how long ago it was. But from that, it was a really nice presentation. We have actually, Orlando Casiano has already implemented that with 2 pollinator pathway gardens, wildflower gardens at Simsbury Farms this spring. For those who've been up there and you've been wondering what those dead patches of grass were, they were getting it ready for wildflower seeds. There's one along the Gulf exit road and another on the westward facing hillside, actually toward the bottom, going toward the bottom of the hill. Those are starting to come in now. It got really dry after we put the seeds out, so they've had to hand water a little bit, but they are starting to come in. I know the hillside's starting to get a little greener right now, but we're excited about that. The golf courses, and then another was we assisted the Drake Hill Bridge Committee, the Flower Bridge Committee, with another pollinator pathway garden in the new park on the left side of the west side of the bridge, but on the left side facing the bridge. So there's another patch there that we've been working with them. But Brian Johnson and the golf team are also working on some places in and around the courts as well. And we intend to keep moving forward with this as over the next forever, the future. So
that's fantastic. That's exciting news.
Yes,
right.
I'm sure you see it every day, Marjorie, as you walk by. So.
Yes. All right. So we are now up to item 5. Helen.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to read from my notes so that I can be efficient with our time. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to bring up that our committee, our membership, needs to discuss a possible change of our calendar for the year. Historically, we used to meet once a month. A year or two ago, it was cut back to once every other month. Last winter, when we were preparing for the 2020 calendar, it was suggested we even go to a quarterly meeting. I did heartily object to that one. I would like to tell you, let's say, some whereases, why I am suggesting this. What has happened in recent months, and I'm not there, but I am coming back. I'm coming back to Simsbury next week sometime. I've been gone since January 1st, but I've tried to keep up. But what I have observed over the time, number one, in the March 4th meeting, I did not participate. I wasn't there, but I did send a letter regarding a referral process that raised some questions, many questions. And then number 2, during the budget process, again, I raised some questions about how the open space expense was discussed during the budget process, but not by the Open Space Committee. We didn't have the opportunity to interject or even to question what was being put forward. And we had to do it after the fact, in a sense. Number 3, moving forward quickly, this Meadowwood project has come up. And number 4, the master plan. A lot of these questions that have come up and a lot of these issues that have raised the questions would have been possibly not there had that master plan included and been more complete with the stewardship policy to guide all of the commissions through these referral processes and to guide us to be what we should be doing. Let me read a comment that I wrote here, if I may. It's been such a stressful time, I have to say that, and I appreciate everyone's hard work. I thoroughly understand that we are stressed, we are stretched, but if the whole committee could meet monthly, it might take some of the pressure off. It could help further the work of the subcommittee that was given the job of the stewardship policy. We could perhaps have it more regularly on our agenda every other month so we can hear what's going on, interject our help. I mean, I think we could help by just meeting. It's so much harder for us to create the opportunity for special meetings. If we had a monthly meeting, it's a placeholder in our calendars. Everybody can plan for it. And it wouldn't be so difficult to get us together if we did not have an item enough items to warrant a regular meeting, then it would be easy to cancel that meeting. But to create a special meeting in these times, as we've been experiencing all of these projects and all of this responsibility that we have to be advisory to the Board of Selectmen, I think it's just not working out. And I would like to put forward and I'm anxious to hear your input, all the members of this committee. I would like to put forth that we change back to the once a month meeting. I think it's much more efficient, and we could do a better job of meeting our responsibilities toward the town and toward the Board of Selectmen. That's a motion. If you like a motion for discussion.
Right. What, do we need a motion for discussion, or do we just discuss? We'll have to discuss whether we want a motion to change the calendar. So I'm going to open it up for discussion so that we can see whether we want to go forward with a motion to change. So does anyone have an objection to going back to monthly scheduled meetings with the idea that we could cancel them if there wasn't anything on our agenda? I know this would probably affect the town staff the most, and they have the most meetings. Would it be difficult for the town staff to schedule a meeting once a month for open space? And as far as the commission for the members of the committee, is there any objection they have to meeting once a month? I know I do not.
I'm sorry, what was that last comment, Marjorie?
I do not have an objection to scheduling for once a month. I know I've been on the committee off and on, and I know sometimes they're quarterly. And when you miss a quarterly meeting, you're meeting every half a year, so that is a problem, and then you lose track of what's going on. Susan, did you have something to say?
Well, I support meeting monthly and having kind of a standing time ready, especially we've had a lot of things going on, and now I feel like a lot of things have piled up. So we made good progress on the kind of the open space document that you and I and Mike and Tim were working on, but that kind of got stalled because other things came up. And I think, what we could do is have a monthly standing meeting. But if we don't need that for the full board, maybe that could be used for subcommittee work. And we could continue to make progress on these other kind of side projects, which we really need to inform our decisions on open space. And, I agree with Helen that the timing is sort of off. We should have had those other things, in place for the master plan, but we're doing the best we can. But I think this would facilitate making sure that things don't get, put in, the dustbin.
I like the idea of using if we don't have enough for the full committee, then we can use it for the subcommittee, because trying to find a date when everyone's available, that also pushes that out further down the line.
Right.
Staff, does this work for you?
I'll speak. Is it ideal? It's not ideal, but I understand the need for the short term at least. We all. I speaking for myself. I'm frequently at the Board of Selectmen meetings, the Park and Rec Board meetings. We have other standing commitments in the evening, and it does. It's just one more thing. But I'm not complaining about it. But if you're flexible enough that there isn't something imperative on the agenda, that if we can step off, either myself not be included on a particular meeting, or again, if we can shift the work to subcommittees at some of those meetings, that would be helpful, as well as what Susan's recommended. So for the short term, I know nobody knows more than me that there's a lot that's going on right now. So
yes.
I certainly understand the need and the desire to meet monthly, and we'll do my best to accommodate it.
If we substitute some of our subcommittee meetings in there, then it's not an additional meeting.
Correct.
All right. Then I'd entertain a motion to amend our calendar.
How many times do I have to tell you?
Amend the motion to amend our calendar to monthly meetings. Do we have a second? Do we have a motion?
I moved.
You moved. All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Susan. Okay. All in favor? Well, it's just, all right. Aye.
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 How do you vote? Yes. All right. I think that carries it. All right.
Just
Yes.
one quick thing,
Okay.
Marjorie. So just
Yeah.
right now, our every other month meeting schedule, I believe, is the first Wednesday at 4:30.
Yes.
For the other months, do we just want to try our best to keep that time?
Yes.
The first Wednesdays at 4:30?
It's all the
Okay.
same time. Yeah.
Yeah. And, as Tom mentioned, we are stretched pretty thinly right now as we're in pandemic response mode and organizing meetings. We have additional requirements and challenges under the executive order, particularly while we're holding the virtual meetings. So I think, Tom mentioned, it just might be that if it's a particularly challenging month, instead of maybe seeing, myself and Tom and Mike, it might be one of us or two of us. And we'll probably reach out. Like for today, we asked Heather, and she graciously agreed to help clerk the meeting for us. Just, trying to find a little bit of, relief so we can keep our meetings moving forward. So we may be reaching out to Heather again to help clerking the meeting.
Challenging times.
Just some little tweaks that, we might need to do, but we're certainly happy to accommodate the group if we can make it work.
And that way, if we do miss a meeting, it only goes for 2 months rather than for 6 months.
Sure.
Right now, if we miss a meeting, we're out 6 months. All right. So we don't have any more agenda items, so I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn, but I also want to say I'm so glad to see everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy.
All right. And we look forward to you coming back to Simsbury. Do we have oh, I like the cat.
We all have to be on our best behavior now.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. We're adjourned.